Hello, everybody. We're going to do a quick lesson here using Gravit. Gravit is a free program. It has changed its name recently to Corel Vector, and I think there is some wording now where it won't be free forever, but it's still a great tool that you can use, especially if you are doing homeschooling and you want access to something that'll work on pretty much any PC or Mac computer. So I'm going to go over a quick lesson with you today on how we are going to design an emoji. So let's go to Gravit and sign in. You can type in Gravit in your search menu. You'll find Gravit Cloud. You can sign in with your Google account and you'll get here. So when you get here, everybody, what we're going to do is we're going to create a simple emoji. This will actually teach you a lot of the things you need to know about making vector graphics. And this can also lead into lessons where you can expand upon this. So again, if you're doing a homeschool situation, this is a great starting point on how to use the basic tools. And yeah, you can take it from there. So we're going to go to screen size, going to click down on that and go to website small. That's going to give us an empty page. If your screen looks a little bit different, if you're on a touchscreen device, you might need to go up into the top left corner. You'll see a different menu in the top left corner, and then you'll go to view and you'll do disable touch interface. You would only need to do that if you want to follow along with exactly with what I'm doing and to have your screen match the desktop view. Okay, so you should see something like this. The next thing that we'll want to do is we'll actually just want to get a reference image to practice with. So what I'm going to do is going back to Chrome here. I'm just going to go ahead and grab a picture of an emoji. So I'm just going to do the classic love emoji, which you've probably seen a million times. And I'm just going to go ahead and save that as a reference image. So I'm going to be looking around here for a picture of a love emoji, something like that, one of these. And I'm just going to go ahead and save this image to my desktop. Then I'm going to go back to Corel Vector and I'm going to import that into here. File, import, place image. And there it is. So one of the first tools that we're going to use is this tool up here called the pointer tool. You'll notice that you can choose other tools when you click down, but for right now, we're going to use that basic pointer tool. We're going to go ahead and click on the image. We're going to hold Shift as we click on the corners and drag it. That will make it smaller. And then we're going to go ahead and put this image up here in the top left of our screen. Now, once it's up here in the top left, we're going to go ahead and relabel this layer. Right now, it came in with the name that it got from the internet. So I'm going to double click here and just call this Love Emoji Original. And then I'm going to lock it right here. Oops, excuse me, not the trash can, but lock it right here. There we go. So there's a little lock symbol right there. So great, now we're ready to build. So what I want you to think about when you see an emoji, and I'm going to zoom in now by pressing Command+. I'm also holding down the space bar to access the little hand tool, which is the dragger. I want you just to think about the shapes that you see here. And one of the things you'll learn as you continue to make more vectors is that gradients are really a big deal. Everything is kind of made up of either gradients or solid colors. And shapes can be really simple, but then can be distorted to look like whatever you want. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So let's just see, we see a circle in the background. We see a fade of color from orange to yellow. We see another circle above that that has a highlight from kind of like bright white to yellow. Obviously, we see two eyes and a mouth. You'll see shading inside the eyes, a little bit of brightness around the eyes, and then the hearts also have shading on the inside and also seem to have a little bit of reflection on the top here. So we're going to build all that with really simple shapes. And actually in this lesson, we'll pretty much only be using the circle tool as our starting point. So we're going to go up to the tools now. We're going to grab the ellipse tool. The ellipse tool allows us to make circles if we hold down Shift. That will make it a perfect circle. So I'm going to hold down Shift and drag and make a big circle. Okay, now when I make the big circle, what I'm going to go do is over here on the right where it says fills, I'm going to go ahead and click on the fills section right here where I get to choose a color. I'm going to click on that right there. And that's going to give me the fills options. So color fills are just, just one solid color. But if you look at this emoji, it's actually got two colors. So we're actually going to choose the radial gradient. Now, a radial gradient allows you to have a color that goes from one color to another. So it does like a fade of colors. So in this case, we want to go from yellow to orange. Luckily, we have yellow and orange as two generic colors right here for us, so we can use those. So I'm going to click on the center circle here. Very carefully, make sure you land right on the middle dot, and that's going to be yellow. Then you'll notice there's another little circle here, which represents the color on the outer edge. I'm going to click on that, and there I'm going to choose orange. So I'm going to go from yellow to orange, and that's great. That's actually a perfect background for our image. So we're going to actually go ahead and just keep moving on. My goal is to make this a quick lesson so you can stop whenever and then just catch up as I go. So I'm going to go ahead over here on the left side, double click this, and I'll call this face background. I'm also going to lock it. I always label and lock as I go. That way I don't have any messes. Now let's do that shading circle that's above the emoji. So you'll see that it's kind of brighter up here than it is down the middle. So let's actually go ahead and grab that circle tool again. Let's hold shift again. Now, when you drag a circle and you want it to line up with another, you can just, move it around and drag it. And again, right now you'll see as I drag it, I get these little guide marks, which are great. Those guide marks let you know that you are lining something up perfectly. So those guides are built into this. If you get this message here, that to save, what you can do is do an auto save. This will save to the Gravit cloud. Again, this program's free for 15 days. So as long as you're doing that for 15 days, enabling the autosave is great. It'll just save into the cloud, but you can also download the file. So here we go with this circle. If I want to make this again a little bit bigger, maybe I'll drag shift. If I hold shift and alt together, I can drag from the center. And to me, that looks pretty good. Maybe just a little bit smaller than that. Now, in this one, I want to go ahead and add another gradient, but I want to go from bright white to yellow. So in this case, I'm going to go over to the fills. I'm going to go ahead and click on the fills button here. And I'm going to choose from the choices down here. I'm going to choose linear gradient. Okay, so a linear gradient is going to go down in a line. So instead of it coming from the circle and fading out in a circular radial fashion, a linear gradient fades in a linear or in a line from one color to the other. In this case, we want the brightness to be up here. So I'm going to bring this circle up to the top. And I'm going to bring this little circle here, kind of like right around here down to the middle or so. Now, if I wanted to sample the colors exactly that I see in the emoji, what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to grab the eyedropper and sample. So first I'm going to click on the top dot. I'm going to grab the sampler and I'm going to touch the top bright yellow section. Then I'm going to click on the bottom dot here. Going to grab the eyedropper. And in this case, now I'm going to go ahead and pick the kind of yellowy orange section here between the eyes. Can be a little tricky to find the color, but that sounds about right. Now you'll notice that this gradient does seem to have a hard line at the top edge, but it does seem to fade out on the side edges. How do we do that? Well, we actually can do that while we're still here in the gradient. So the top color, which was the white or yellow, we're just going to leave that one as is, but I'm going to go ahead and click back down on the circle that controls the secondary color, the middle yellow. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the opacity. So if you take a look at the values down here, a hex value stands for the color. The RGB is another way to represent that color value, but the A stands for opacity. So I actually am going to lower the opacity or the visibility of this middle color. And I'm going to do it pretty drastic. I'm going to type 5% in there. You can press enter after that, and it then fades away. And you start to see that same kind of disappearance, that same kind of invisibility, if you will. And that's perfect. So we're just going to go ahead and leave it there. That now creates a highlight layer for our layer. You could also move this around if you want to change the way the highlight comes through. You could also change the percentage if you think it should be a little bit different. But for me, that's actually pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep moving on. And we're going to call this face. I'll call it the shine layer because it's a shiny layer. Now let's keep looking at our emoji. What else do we need? Well, we need some cheeks there. So let's go ahead and grab another circle. Again, I'm going to hold shift as I do this. I'm going to align that circle somewhere right around here. And I'm going to go back to fills. Going to go ahead and give that an orange. Now, when I give this an orange, again, if you wanted to sample exactly that cheek color, go ahead and use that little sampler, go right there and get that exact cheek color. Now, in this case, we want softness all the way around the edges. How do we do that? To do that, we can try another effect. If we go down here under fills, there's the effects and then blur. If we click on the blur value, what you can do here, and I'll move my video, you'll see that you can increase the blur value. If you increase this blur value, it'll soften the edges, and eventually you're going to get that super soft cheek that we can see over here. And that looks great. So now we got one cheek. I'm going to go ahead and call this one a cheek. And then one of the great things in digital art is we should just copy and paste as we go, save yourself some time. So if we got a good one here, now you can right click and copy and paste it. And well, actually, you know what? I don't see copy and paste here, but I'll just show you where it is also. You can go up to edit, copy, and then edit, paste. You can also use the shortcuts, which in my case, since I'm on a Mac, is Command C and Command V. If you're on a PC, it'll be Control C and Control V. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click that again, Command C and then Command V. And now I've got a second copy. If you don't notice the copy, it might be just because it's stacked on top of each other, but you'll notice the names over here on the left. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this over. Now I got the two cheeks. Perfect. So I'll go ahead and call this cheek R for right, and I'll go ahead and double click this one and call it cheek L for left. I always want to label as I go because you can get into a real mess if you don't label as you go. So I'm going to go ahead and lock both those layers. Now we're ready to make the eye. So to make the eye, we're going to keep using that same old circle, but we're going to just modify it a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and drag out a circle. Before I add the colors, let's get the shape going. Now in this case, I actually want to distort that circle a little bit. And to distort that circle, what I need to do in this program is I need to convert this circle into a path. You'll notice right now that the ellipse has a little symbol on there. It's a shape, but I want to make it editable. So I'm going to right click on this and choose convert to path. You could also find this under modify, path, convert to path. So I'm going to do that. Now that it's been converted, I'm going to go ahead and grab the white arrow. Now, when I grab the white arrow, what I'm going to do is I can move the points. So I'm going to be able to move the top point up. And then this middle point down here, I'm going to be able to drag that up. And now I've got that eye shape. Now I can continue to edit it here. I could maybe bring this in a little bit here, bring this in a little bit here. And there we go. I've got my eye. So now after I'm done moving the points with the white arrow, I'll go back to the black arrow. And now that I'm back on the black arrow, what I can do is add the colors and make it come to life. So what I'm going to do now is go back to fills. We already know about that little sampler. So I'm going to sample that inner brown of the eye. But you'll notice the brown has shading and also a highlight on the edge. So what we're going to do for that is use the effects again. So we can make sure that the eye is selected. We're going to go down here into the effects. And we're going to go first into inner shadow. That's going to give us the dark edge on the inside. I'm going to set the blur to 20. I can leave the opacity at 50, but then here in the color value, I'm actually going to just choose a deep black. And that's going to give me that inner shading. Again, you can modify those values as much as you want. To get the highlighting on the outer edge, again, we only have a certain amount of free effects here with this program, but you can use drop shadow. And in drop shadow, you can also blur out your value to 20. And in this case, you're going to actually choose a bright color or yellow to get that little bit of a glow. Now, ideally, we'd use another effect like outer glow, but that's not included in the free version. So we're just going to do the best we can here with drop shadow and with inner shadow. And now we got one eye, so that's great. We can do the same steps we did before to copy it. Command C, Command V, or Control C, Control V. We got two eyes. That's perfect. And the mouth is actually just another kind of eyeball. So I'm just going to literally just copy that again and flip it. Now, obviously, we have a little sad face right now, but to make that into the happy face, all we got to do is flip it over. You can use this little white dot here to flip it over. You just drag this, and you'll notice that when you do that, it actually changes the angle value over here. So if you want it to be perfect, you could just type 180, and it'll be perfectly turned around. Now, obviously, that mouth shape's a little bit different. So if you remember, the white arrow is how we do that. So we grab the white arrow, and then we can go ahead and click on the points here and manipulate it. I'd probably make the mouth a little bit deeper here, bring that down, and maybe bring these points up a little bit. Right, and there we go. We're now building this emoji. Obviously, we can change the angles. Again, this is just a quick lesson, and I'll go over the angles a little bit in a second, but this is pretty good. So let's go ahead and label everything. Call this mouth. Call this one eye. And let's make sure I know which one is which. So I'm just gonna use my pointer here. That's gonna be eye left. And this one over here is gonna be eye right. Okay, so now we got 2 eyes and a mouth and we're great. So now I'm going to go ahead and lock all this stuff. We're almost done with this emoji. So now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and build the heart. We're literally almost done. So let's go ahead and grab the circle tool, the ellipse, and we're going to use the heart to build it. So again, we're just going to start fresh with a gray circle here. Make sure everything else is locked. And now to convert it into a heart, we're going to do similarly what we did to the eyeball. We're going to right click on this, convert to path. We're then going to grab the white arrow and then we're going to click on the points. Now we're going to go a little deeper into actually adjusting those curves. What we're going to do is click on that top point and drag it down a bit. Now, obviously that doesn't look like a heart. And one of the reasons it doesn't look like a heart is because of the curvature. It's not sharp like a heart is. So what we're going to do now is go over here to the joint section. When you are using the white arrow, you'll see that in the appearance area. And we're going to change that joint from being an asymmetric joint to being a straight joint. That'll make it sharp. Then we're going to click on the bottom button here too. And we're also going to click on that straight point. So now we're going to have 2 straight points. Perfect. It's starting to look like the heart. We'll drag this down and then we're getting even more of that same kind of heart look. Now for these points over here, to get that heart to look exactly the way you want it, you can manipulate how you want to use the buttons. Again, there's different curves here. So asymmetric is going to give you the ability to pull one curve in and not the other. You can see that I can make one side longer here with this handlebar. So you can use that to kind of carve out the heart that you want. I'm going to do Command Z to undo that. You could also try mirrored, or you could try disconnected. Disconnected will let you move one of these without moving the other. I think that's going to kind of give you a messier heart. So I'm going to just go and keep it simple. I'm going to use mirrored because then both of the shapes will move. And then I'm going to do the same over here with mirrored. So I'm just changing the way the joint and the handlebars work in relationship to the point. So I'm going to go ahead and move that as well here. Again, you can keep tweaking this you can really tweak this forever. This is one of those things where the more you practice, the better it's going to get. Again, I just want to do this as a quick lesson, so I don't want to spend too much time on fixing that, but I think that's pretty good. Obviously, you'd want to try to make them as even as possible. And then you can switch back to the black arrow, and then you can do any other modifications, like maybe make it a little bit skinnier and maybe a little bit taller. Now that I've got the heart, we'll reuse the same steps we did before to get the colors in there. I'm going to go to fills. I'm going to do a linear gradient. In this case, I'm going to do a linear gradient that's a little bit brighter at the top. You'll notice the heart is a little bit brighter at the top. And I'm going to go ahead and sample the top red here. And then, let's make sure I click on the first dot first. And then let's grab the red. Yes, and then I'm going to click on the bottom dot here and sample the bottom red.
All right, so now that we've done the outside of the heart, the inside of the heart, the next thing that we're going to do after applying the linear gradient is give it some shading on the inside. We're going to go over here to inner shadow for that. Again, blur of 20, change the color to black. That looks good. You might want to darken that if you click on color and choose pure black. That maybe looks a little bit better. You'll also notice that the heart has a drop shadow, so I'm going to go ahead and put a drop shadow on that as well. If I want to sample the exact color of that drop shadow, I can get right under there into the heart. I'm going to increase the blur of the drop shadow. I know you can barely see it. You'll start to see it now. I'm actually going to move the heart up here so you can see it a little bit better. And in this case, we actually want to move the value of the shadow to come down. So we'll do that with Y, and we'll bring it down a little bit there. That looks pretty good. Now, the last and final step here is to go ahead and just add a little bit of shine to the top of that heart. So to do that, we're going to do some steps we've already done before. Let's just label as we go. I'm going to leave this one unlocked for a second because we're going to want to group it. So let's go ahead and grab the ellipse. And I'm going to make a little circle here. That's going to be that little bit of shine that you can see on the top of the heart. And in this case, we don't want an inner shadow on that. So we'll delete the inner shadow. We'll delete the drop shadow. But for this specific little shiny part of the heart, we're going to go back into our fills And I'm going to use linear gradient here, and I'm actually going to put white on both sides, which I know might sound a little strange right now. White on both sides. But now that there's white on both sides, if you remember, similar to what we did with the shine layer, I'm going to lower the opacity of one of the gradients to like 5. That's going to give me that see-through quality, right? And now again, it's very subtle. The shine on the heart is almost invisible. So I'm going to do a little bit of that. And then you can kind of use all the things we talked about today. I'll also maybe use a little bit of blur to soften that. Again, increasing the blur will soften that shine. And if you want to make it even more kind of invisible, you can take that whole fill layer and then lower the opacity. So it's, again, sometimes we do stuff when making digital art that you barely notice, but it's there. So then I'm going to do a Command C on this, Command V to copy paste it. Again, if you're on a PC, that'll be Control C, Control V. We'll label this as shine right. And let's call it heart shine right. And then we'll go ahead and call this heart shine left. And we'll call that heart. Now that all these 3 are selected, I'm going to grab them all together by dragging an empty selection in my screen. And then I can go to group them by going up to Modify, Group Selection. You can also press Command G, or you can right click. And now you have a heart group. Now it's a lot easier to do Command C, Command V. Put the hearts where they belong. And boom, there you go. We've now created this emoji. Now, if you wanted to share this and make it transparent to share it to someone else, you would turn off the eyeball here and you would go to File, Export, and export this as a PNG. That would give you a transparent file that you could then share with anyone else. Now, again, everybody, the goal here was we're using a free program called Corel Vector. Again, unfortunately, this program was free last year. I think it was pretty much just for the pandemic that it was completely free. Now it's only 15 days free, but it's a great tool that, if you need to use a vector program and you don't have one, it's got a lot of good functionality and you've got it free for 15 days. So hopefully this showed you how to do gradients, how to manipulate shapes with the pen tool or the white arrow, how to work with inner shadows, how to work with drop shadows, and also how to recreate something starting from scratch. So thanks a lot, everybody. I'll be posting some more videos. I'm going to try to do more free software stuff out there because I know a lot of you are doing that, and I know some of you are switching over to doing homeschooling. So hopefully that will be useful to you. Please let me know in the comments if there's anything that you'd like me to cover, other free stuff that's out there or other things that might be useful for homeschoolers out there. Have a great one, everybody, and thanks for joining me.